How you doing?
Man, I didn't know NIL would treat track stars like this.
How you doing?
How you doing, buddy? Good
Appreciate
to see
you taking the time.
Oh, anytime, man. Anytime.
Should have all of your favorites in there. Got some good sources of what you like.
Yeah. Oh no, that's gonna be good.
I don't have a clue what I'm saying. Welcome to the Stuck in My Thoughts podcast. It's the place you want to be to hear a one-of-a-kind POV. As always, I'm your host, Justin Stuckey. And if you're new to the show, welcome. I hope you guys subscribe. We appreciate all the support. And if you are a returner, welcome back. For today's episode, we have the man whose voice rings around millions of TV sets on the fall. And he's the host of College Game Day for both football and basketball, the legendary Rece Davis.
Justin, great to be with you, man.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you taking the time.
You bet.
We met in Auburn. We're filming in Auburn. We met in Auburn last year, and it was a great moment. I was shadowing Jay Billis, got the opportunity to meet you. We connected well, and months passed by. It was probably like 8 months passed by. I saw that you guys were going to be at game day in Tuscaloosa, Bama versus LSU, and something told me, man, reach out to Rece, reach out to Rece. I had only had your email, and I reached out to you, and you guys were doing the college football playoff reveal. And I don't know if it was during the break or if you guys pre-recorded that, but you responded. I was like, because I was watching the show, I was like, there's no way he responded this quick. And so I like to give everybody their flowers on the show, just from a personal standpoint. I was curious, what made you somebody who is at the top of the game when it comes to the sports media industry, let a guy who you only met once prior job shadow you in a place where there's other big names, other billion-dollar things going on? What made you allow me to be able to job shadow you?
Well, a couple of things. The first thing is, and I don't mean to just come on your podcast and throw a bunch of compliments your way, which you deserve, but you're an impressive guy. And the effort that you showed and the questions you asked and the fact that you were so interested in doing this when we met here in Auburn was impressive. And no pun intended, but it stuck with me. The meeting. See what I did there? But not intentionally. So that you're an impressive guy. You resonate with people. You connect with people well. And it was clear that you weren't just saying, "Hey, I think I might want to be on TV." You had set a goal and a path, and you wanted to do it. That was the primary reason. The second reason is that when I was trying to get started, I wish I'd had somebody that I could reach out to that would actually answer me and maybe give me a little guidance, and maybe I would have avoided, some mistakes along the way or gotten a leg up. Because a lot of times in any business, but particularly in this one, you have to be good enough and you have to prepare and you have to hone your craft. But sometimes you just need somebody to help you get your reel in front of somebody. And if I can do that, then I'm happy to help. And like I said, you're a great guy. You're fun to talk to. You've got a great personality. So I was like, yeah, sure, come on over. And we had a good morning.
Yeah, we had a good time for sure. Yeah. What advice would you give to the younger generation trying to get into the space? And I know a lot of people ask me like, man, how do you know Rece Davis? How do you get in these opportunities to be at game day? And I'm like, man, number one, God. Everybody knows my podcast. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. But second of all, I'm not scared to ask. What advice would you give to the younger generation who may be a little bit timid or don't really know where to start?
Just what you said. The answer is always no unless you ask. I mean, if you're sitting there saying, boy, I wish I would have asked, well, then your answer was no. And there might be times when people do want to help you and they say, hey, I can't do this time or whatever. But there's nothing wrong with asking. And I think another thing that you've done well, too, and that is beneficial for people as they learn is to try to find that line between being persistent and going overboard and maybe turning people off. You don't do that at all. And I think that almost comes into play more, let's say there's a job opening, right? And you want the job and you've sent, you've tried to make every contact and you've sent your tape or your reel or your I don't know what you would call it now. We used to actually send physical tapes, but you would send your work, copies of your work in. And now, how do you let them know that you're interested, that you're persistent, that you're not afraid to ask, but at the same time, don't make them say, geez, this guy called again?
Yeah,
come on,
don't
you get the message? That kind of thing. So it's a fine line, it's a little bit of a feel, and it's gonna vary from person to person. But the thing I would say is just what you're doing. don't be afraid to ask. Don't be discouraged when the answer is no from time to time. And try to find that balance between being persistent and showing interest and aggression and not going overboard to the point that you turn off whoever's making the hire.
I think that's some really sound advice. And we talk about the influences in the sports media space, but we want to talk about influences in our life in general. And one of your major influences was your father, Jerry Davis, who passed some years ago. Talk about the impact that your father had on your life and developing you into the man that you are today.
Well, the first thing is that nothing in Jerry Davis's house came before church, God, spiritual life. You had to live up to that first. Everything else was secondary. I'm not trying to paint him as perfect. He certainly wasn't, nor am I. But it was something that was instilled in us at an early age. We were at church when the doors opened. We were not just going and sitting in church. We were part of it. We tried to serve, tried to help people who were less fortunate. My dad was particularly diligent in helping maybe older folks who couldn't help themselves. He would drive the church van and go around and pick them up and make sure they got to church. Make sure people were fed if they needed to, and just different things like that. I think instilled perspective in me. Now, he was a machinist. He didn't go to college. He liked sports. He enjoyed sports a lot, but he was not the quintessential sports dad. My dad probably liked working on cars and piddling, as he called it, building stuff, fixing stuff. He can fix everything. I can fix nothing. He made me help him, but I didn't learn a thing, Justin. I don't know how to do any of that. But he really instilled in me the value of, first, spirituality, and then secondly, work. And if I got out of line, my dad didn't swear, so he never, never heard him say. Actually, I heard him. I don't know if I can say this in your podcast. I actually heard him get angry 2 times my entire life and refer to someone under his breath as a jackass, and that was it. That was the strongest language I ever heard him say. But if I got out of line a little bit, he would say, "That ain't no way to be, boy." And that was, that was, him telling 12-year-old Rece, "You're not behaving in a manner that meets the standard that we expect, in this house, and that you expect as a man, or a young man who proclaims himself to be a Christian." So that was probably the most influential thing he did to me. And from my mom, to give her credit too, Dad was the practical one. I don't know if he was a taskmaster, but it was like, you're supposed to work. My mother was the one who said, don't limit your dreams. If you want to be something, pursue it. And but I was very fortunate to be brought up in a Christian household that also provided an environment, even though they didn't have a lot of experience with it themselves. If you want to pursue something that seems out of reach, try.
Seeing how your parents were able to develop you and watching the aspect of parenthood, how have you been able to, while you're at the top of your game in the media industry, be at the top of your game as a father? How have you been able to balance the dynamic of being a father and a family man as well as your career?
You'd have to ask them if I actually accomplished that, my son and my daughter, but I hope I did. I think this job is demanding in terms of time. It's not breaking rocks. Everybody works hard, no matter what their field is, but it requires being away. Not only in travel, even when I was working a lot in studio and doing SportsCenter, it required being at the studio a lot. When I was hosting, studio shows for college football before I started doing game day almost 10 years ago now, you would be in that studio from 11 a.m. on Saturday until 2 or 3 in the morning. And so you're gone, basically. Saturday's out of the mix. So the thing that I always attempted to do, and hopefully do well, is that when I was home, I was present. And I really tried to be engaged with both Christopher and Elizabeth in what they were interested in, tried to provide the things that I had been provided, but at the same time, making sure that I wasn't mentally at work. Or what? Look, I didn't bat 1,000 there. There are always times when you're distracted, but I tried to be there for them. And when I was home, I was home.
Yeah, you asked. You said I'd have to ask your kids if you did well. I actually talked to Elizabeth today.
Oh, did you really?
Yes, I did,
Yeah.
and she gave you a great compliment. She had a lot to say about her father, but one of the things that she highlighted in her time, she's an aspiring actress and things now, but she was saying when she was growing up, she can't remember a time that you ever missed, and that was to me. I was like, man, he's always on TV. He's never. He's always doing what he has to do. I'm like, that is a great balance to have. So I think you did well.
I tried. You know what the funny thing is? You beat yourself up. She can't remember things I missed. I do. I remember two things that I missed. One was something she probably didn't even care about, but it was early in the days of college game day basketball. And I can't, it wasn't brownies, but it was something like that. Very, she was very young. And they had this ceremony thing where they were, it was a big deal. It was a culmination of it, and they were walking over. And of course, they did it on Friday night. And I couldn't go. And I mean, I was, I wasn't, wallowing in the floor crying, but I was really unhappy about having to miss this. And so, when you do miss things, you miss that. And then another one I missed actually doing game day football that was very frustrating. She had a play, and we had Army Navy. And I was flying back from Philadelphia, very short flight to Hartford. And I was supposed to be in my house and on my couch by 2 o'clock, and the play started at 8. And the flight kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And I had a chance, because it was really snowing, terrible weather. I had a chance to maybe get a rental car at like 3 and maybe make it. And they said, no, we're going to leave it for, and we didn't. And of course, and I missed it, So I'm glad she doesn't remember those. There are a couple that missed it. As a dad, they stick with you when you do.
You did well for majority of the time. But we've talked about the influences along the journey. Let's talk about the journey itself. And you starting out, I'm going to give you a pass on this one. Starting out, Tuscaloosa.
Your favorite place. You like it over there. I could tell.
My mom likes it over there. She's a graduate. She's an alum from there. But you starting out there, going from Channel 33 in Tuscaloosa on to Columbus, Georgia, to Flint, Michigan. And there was a time period there where you had a decision to make if you wanted to move up in the ranks to some of the bigger cities or go into ESPN. And you had a fellow friend, Andrea Kirby, at the time, give you the advice to send your tape. At the time, you may have thought you weren't ready or you need to be at a bigger market. What was the hesitation there?
I didn't understand the business. And you asked me earlier about why I answered you. And in addition to your personal qualities, that's one of the reasons. I didn't understand at all how it worked. I thought that ESPN drew from the very top markets, and that just wasn't the case. And that's really an indictment of my lack of awareness and lack of knowledge about it. But I didn't have anyone pointing me. At that time, I didn't have an agent, so I was out there flailing sort of on my own. And
me right now.
So that was, man, you're good. But it was, I was trying to figure it out. And when she told me to do it, I sent it there. But the hesitation at that point, I don't think was lack of confidence, but it was more thinking, well, I haven't completed the steps. And as it turns out, I actually hadn't. But in terms of getting in the door there, that wasn't something that was a deal breaker. So, there's no way you know this because this just happened, but Andrea is writing a book. And she asked me to write a blurb about the book and sent me a copy of it. And so after I read through and written the thing, she wrote me back and said, did you recognize your story in chapter 15? And I said, I thought it sounded familiar.
Yeah.
And it was basically a time right after I was hired where it was uncertain whether I was going to last at ESPN. And she actually remembered some details, probably remembered them a little differently than I did, but you get a little, you get some creative license, or maybe she's right and I don't remember it the same. But at any rate, she advocated for me and said, be patient, we're working on some things. And some of it was technical, some of it was confidence, some of it was understanding the environment of where you were. And she was a great help to me in terms of finding the right way to present and the right way to perform that would resonate, and it kept them from firing me, I guess. So,
yeah, it's crazy. You think about ESPN, you automatically think about Rece Davis and Game Day, and it's hard for people to be like, man, you might have almost got let go so many moons ago.
Yeah.
But when you're in that space and people see you on camera pretty much all the time, they don't see from where you started in the process. And we talked before the camera start rolling, you got an opportunity that many people have never have, and now will never have. The late, great Kobe Bryant, you got a chance to meet him and talking to him about the process, understanding that Rome wasn't built in a day. Everything doesn't always happen the next day. It's not going to be, that dream hit. Talk about that conversation because, like I said, many people never had it nor will.
It was at this event called the ESPN Upfronts. Every year you bring in advertisers and you let them know what's in store. It's a big presentation, usually in a New York theater where they do actual shows, and we bring in as many big name people as we can to help send out the message of what we're going to do. In this particular year, Kobe had some projects that were going on the various ESPN platforms, and he was in the green room. And there were a group of people around, and I was standing close, and then people had to go out to the set, and all of a sudden, it's just Kobe Bryant and me, sort of standing there. And we made small talk, and he was talking about coaching his daughter in basketball. And the thing that resonated with me, Justin, was I said, "Do you miss it?" And he didn't bat an eye. He said, "Not a bit." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I get up every morning with the same challenge in front of me, just in a different field." He said, "I want to win at business, at being a father, at coaching my daughter. I want to be great at it. And that same challenge drives me and gets me out of bed, just like when I play basketball." Now, there might be cynics who say, look, as great as he was rationalizing to himself. You would understand this far better than I. The idea of, while you're not at the point where you're giving it up, but as it is with any athlete, at some point, wherever it is on the road, it comes. But at that moment, he had me completely convinced, and I have no reason to doubt him, that he was just wired in such a way that I'm going to achieve, I'm going to excel, I'm going to put everything I have into the task that I can handle right now. And it was, he was remarkably candid, and he talked about, things that he admired in watching other college coaches, because we talked a little bit about college coaches versus the NBA and different things like that. And he, it was probably no more than a 10-minute conversation, but it was one that I thought, man, this is pretty cool, because you get to talk to people, but to just randomly, accidentally, winding up sitting back in a room, and you're the only two guys sitting there.
With Kobe Bryant, that's different.
Yeah, and it was Kobe Bryant. Now, eventually somebody comes in, and when they come in, they're coming right. They're coming right to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
But it was a cool thing. It was an impressive thing.
Man, that's the Mamba mentality, man. That's something that'll live on. I think it's great for somebody to employ that. Try to employ that as much as they can in their everyday life. And you talked about the task that he was trying to focus on each and every time, each and every day. You've been at ESPN for numerous years. You've had multiple tasks, multiple opportunities. What has been the most impactful thing along your career?
Probably just the relationships that I've been able to develop. And I know that sounds a little bit like a trite and cliched answer. It was an honor to take over Game Day. It was an honor to start college Game Day basketball. We, in our 20th season, and Jay Billis and I did the first one with Digger Phelps. All of those things, but I think probably as I look back on it, just being around people who are driven and successful and who understand team and are generous. Those are the people that I've been fortunate enough to work with, and most I think blessed to work with, and had the biggest impact on me. And you don't want to let them down, because they don't want to let you down. And because it's sort of that drive for excellence. I'm not going to put any of us in the Kobe Bryant category, because that might be a level all to its own. but all of us want to be excellent. And finding people who want that but are also generous enough to share it is pretty unique. And I've found a lot of them over my career, whether it's, Lou Holtz and Mark May or Billis, or the guys I work with now, and Herb Street and Mcafee and Desmond Howard, and David Pollock's as close a friend as I've got. And and I remember the 7 or 8 years I worked with Hubert Davis, we still remain close. And it's there's a guy who is as good a person as it could be. And I always tease him and say, yeah, now you're coaching. You're not going to be a good guy forever if you're a coach, But, I think probably that's impacted me more than anything else.
That's what's up right there. I think that relationships are the most important thing. And especially me as a college athlete, I feel like that's been, forget all the All-American awards or all conferences, all of that. I feel like the relationships are the things that are going to last. Because you talk about, you're not looking for the end of athletics, but at some point it's going to come. Mm-hmm. But the relationships are going to outlast that. And in the aspect of college athletics in general, me being an athlete, you covering sports for forever, what do you feel about the evolution of college athletics now with the new entry of NIL and transfer portal? Do you feel like it's evolving in a positive manner or a negative manner?
There are a lot of positives to it. I think the positives outweigh the negative because the positives are more fair. There's not really any reason in the world to say that because someone is an athlete that they should be limited in how much money they make. There's no reason for that. There are some negative aspects to the way it's going right now. I think sometimes you lose a little bit of the relationship building that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. You maybe fall into situations in some particular cases where people are listening to people who might not have their best interest at heart. But that doesn't mean that everybody who's transferred has done that, because I'm a firm believer, Justin, coaches are often right. You might even argue they are usually right about an athlete's ability and how they should be used, but they're not always right.
Yeah.
And this is a very short period of time that athletes have in college, and they should be able to choose where they want to go to school. They should be able to choose who they want to play for. And if they feel like, hey, coach loves me, but he doesn't see me the same way that I see myself, or I don't believe that I'm going to maximize what I can be under this regime and this system, then I think they should be able to move.
Yeah.
The flip side of it is I think that at some point there's going to have to be some collective bargaining in which the players will share in the revenues. This is particularly true in football, maybe in basketball as well, but particularly in football. They'll share in the revenues from the college football playoff, from the media deals, and basically all the way around, and they will probably be employees. I think what a lot of times a lot of the players don't see right now is that when you say collectively bargain, that's not just for you, you give something up.
Yeah.
And what I imagine they will give up is this complete unfettered free agency, to some degree. How that will look, what the parameters will be, I don't know. But I would imagine that it's going to be, okay, nobody's limiting your money. You're an employee. We're taking care of, X, Y, and Z, whether it's through a collective structure or university directly. But the flip side of it is that you have this contract, and maybe if you decide to transfer, you owe this back, or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. I think there will be some type of agreed upon thing that will probably help give a little more, a little less instability to the enterprise. And I'm not one. I don't think the sky's falling. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Mm-hmm. I just don't know. Is it the best thing for both the industry? Is it best for the players? They think it is right now, and it may be in the moment. But long term, is it the best way for them to maximize their value while they're in college? So
I can't imagine a free agency when it comes to college athletics. I think it's a balance, like you said. I think on one side, I think the players do deserve to get paid because the institution makes millions of dollars off of them. You think about a Cam Newton, how many jerseys he sold for the university, but his name's not on the back.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, when it comes to the transfer portal, I think it's beneficial. You look at a Joe Burrow not playing at Ohio State, turns his whole career around. Now you look at somebody like Tate Martell, who bounced from 5 to 6 different schools, never really committing. And, I think that's another part. Commitment is a huge thing, especially when it's just regular relationships.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely a balance. I think it needs to have some type of regulation, but I'm glad I'm going to be out of it in a few years so I don't have to worry about it.
Well, Burrow is the perfect example, and there were a couple of extenuating circumstances with him that he got hurt. Dwayne Haskins was good. There were a couple of things that went against him, but like we were talking earlier, they didn't see him as the guy. They thought he might develop into that someday, maybe.
Yeah.
He knew he was. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. Doesn't mean the coach is dumb or didn't know what he was talking about, or boy, what a colossal error. I mean, Dwayne Haskins, as I recall, threw like 50 touchdown passes or something. He was good. So Ohio State had a situation where they had 2 great quarterbacks. I'm not sure that they really knew how good Burrow was. He did. Yeah. And so he understood and he transferred. He should. There are a lot of guys in that situation. Michael Penix that we just saw, went to a better situation for him. So I agree with you. I think the transfer portal is basically good, but like with anything else, I'm not even going to, no one needs to impose rules on it. It is best when used judiciously, thoughtfully, and when the players and the coaches have, explored all avenues as to how transfer, how change of scenery is going to impact somebody.
No matter if they have some legislation or end up being in a free agency, that's to be determined. But what's not to be determined is that every Saturday, we're going to have College Game Day.
Yes, we are.
But when you think about College Game Day, you think of Rece Davis, Kirk Herbstreit, Lee Corso, Desmond Howard. But y'all had a new face this year, Pat McAfee. And I see everything on social media. I've got a chance to meet him before. The older population that have been watching Game Day for years, they're not the biggest fan. But my generation love him.
Yeah.
We think he engages with the audience and the crowd well. He just does stuff that people don't think about and just goes on. How is it working with Pat McAfee this year?
He's a great teammate, and he doesn't have to be. Because he is the hottest thing in sports media. He's built an empire independent of any traditional media giant. He can call his own shot. Yet he has respect for our show and respect for us, that he has come in and he has helped us elevate the show, and he's been a good teammate along the way. And you're right. I've never seen in my 30 plus years in television anyone connect with the crowd the way he does. It's a remarkable thing. And he is sensational at it. And he's even winning over some of the older audience. My wife's aunt is 88 years old. And when Pat first came on the show, even though she's a huge sports fan and a huge football fan, she didn't remember the punter from the Colts, or the West Virginia punter and kicker. She didn't know who he was. And so initially, she was, just as you might expect, not a big fan.
Who is this guy?
But as time went on and she started watching him, I now say to her, hurts my feelings that I think you like Pat more than you like me. She loves all the stuff he does, the connection he makes. She obviously loves the field goal contest. So all of those things she loves. So I think even the people who maybe initially were like, whoa, wait a minute. I think if you give him some time and kind of see what he's about, that in most cases, I think he's won a lot of those people over too. Not everybody, because you'll find this. People, if you're in front of the camera, if you're putting yourself out there in the media business, a lot of people are going to look for a reason not to like you, and there's not a lot you can do about it.
Yeah.
And I'm a guy, and I think you are too, that you want to get along with people. You would very much prefer it if people like you, but maybe they won't. And a lot of times they especially won't on X, but then if you see them in person, they're fine. So, so you kind of get used to it all.
Pat is a character.
He's a character,
He introduced himself to me as Peyton Manning when we first met in that backstage room.
Yeah.
And then when he started cutting his sleeves, he started cutting his sleeves before the show. That's just his character, his charisma.
I mean, think about this. This is a guy, and he told me this story. When he started his media career, he was still punting for the Colts, and he was on this morning radio show in Indianapolis, and they had a comedian on who sort of insisted that everything was scripted so he could get his jokes off. And Pat was a guest on the show, but Pat was like, this guy's not funny. He's not. I'm funnier than he is. And they got into some little thing. I don't know exactly what they got in, but it led to Pat rented out a theater himself for 2 nights and did stand-up. Never done it before in his life. Just went out and filled the place 2 nights and apparently, brought the house down for 2 nights just doing his thing. And I think that led to, what you see on his show. He's got remarkable comedic timing. He's just a guy. He's a good dude to be around, and it's really funny. But he's very confident. He also is, along with that confidence, he's unafraid. He'll take that chance and believe that he will find a way to make it work.
Man, you talk about just being.
Would you rent out a theater to do stand up?
I think I'm pretty funny, to be honest. I don't know about renting out a theater. I tell a few jokes. You can ask my boy Eli. He thinks I'm pretty funny.
Eli, is he funny?
I think I'm a funny
come
guy.
on, Eli.
I think I'm a funny guy. Yeah. But Pat McAfee, like you said, he's just great charisma, and he's had he has a strong knack to finding the comedic moments and having viral moments. And you, I feel like, had your first viral moment this year.
You think that was my first viral moment? It might have been.
That was a really, and me knowing you prior to that, I was like, this is hilarious. You know what I'm about to bring up, right?
I know.
Link,
Yep.
Let a Naysayer Know. Did they kind of explain to you after the show why that was so funny?
Okay, I'll tell you, I'll give you the whole thing. One, you probably know that Jalen Milroe, I'm probably not supposed to say that.
It's okay.
That name here. Jalen Milroe and Terrion Arnold had started selling this merchandise. They had started when everybody was saying, they're down, they don't have a quarterback, they're not going to win. So they started this, this acronym, LANK, and they sold a bunch of merchandise with it on. And I'd seen the stories, and when they started playing a little better, people started buying it. Then it became a thing. I saw interviews. I had no idea there was a secondary meaning to this. None whatsoever. So I see this, and we're out in Pasadena for a couple of days. They're Alabama fans. They're, just not part of the team. They have these shirts that say, or sweatshirts or whatever that say that. Jalen even warmed up for the Rose Bowl in one of the shirts. I think, I hear Terrion Arnold say that it means let a naysayer know. That's what I think it means. I don't know. And so we do this. They go crazy. And the first thought in my head was, okay, this is some type of sexual slang word that I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, and I revert into dad mode. Okay, all right, don't make me stop this car. Okay, everybody back in the car. Let's get the show back on track.
Yeah.
So we go to the sound, with the audio, the sound from the whatever soundbite I was leading to, and they're going, and I'm like, what? And Desmond's trying to tell me, and Joey's trying to tell me, and Pat's still going nuts, and I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. So we're back on set. We go on. We do what we're doing, and so we finish up the segment. And it kind of goes away, and they're like, "How can you not know this, Rece?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And finally, Desmond just said, "Okay," and he basically spelled it out for me, and I was like, oh, and you guys are going to leave me hanging out to dry like that when I didn't know? I didn't have any idea.
I could see when they cut the camera back to your face. I'm like, dude, I think Rece is confused. Like, he doesn't realize what's going on. Because I thought it meant let all naysayers know.
Well, maybe it did. I thought maybe it was all naysayers. I don't know. But
all I know is it was hilarious. Now there's a double meaning. You can't sell those shirts and they put out the real meaning. But
they're still selling them, though, I think.
Oh, they're going to sell.
Yeah.
Because they let all naysayers know and got to the playoffs.
Do you know I got stopped yesterday twice by people bringing up what you just brought up. Just out, I was at Disney to give a speech for Old Dominion, and just random people. So I guess you're right. It was viral for sure, but I had no idea.
I thought it was funny.
I was mad at Joey though. I was like, "You really?" I said, "You really think I'm going there?" He goes, "Joey and our buddies, you know." I was like, "Seriously, Joey?
Yeah.
You really thought that?" And he goes, "I got confidence in you, Rece." You know, Joey.
You're gonna have a new co-star to help out and make sure that he doesn't have any issues.
He's not gonna know.
The greatest, I can say this, he's the greatest college football coach of all time. Nick Saban is joining College Game Day. And we can end on this. How do you feel about that? Having one of the most successful coaches, somebody you have watched, learned from, interviewed, be next to you next season?
It's going to be fantastic. He's really good on TV. And I think one of the things that people will see from him that a lot of people in the state of Alabama, certainly Alabama fans, but I think really fans across the SEC, know that he's got a much better sense of humor than people think. Obviously, his technical knowledge and ability to evaluate players is unparalleled. But he's a great communicator. I mean, he can go up and give a speech to business leaders and just have them in the palm of his hand. And he's able to execute that on television too in small doses that we've had before. Now we're going to get the full course of it. And I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to give us another layer of the show that comes with having coached recently. Not to mention, as you said, coached at such a high level, but he's just out of it. So there's a certain perspective that he's going to have that really you won't find anywhere else. So I'm really excited about it. He wants to be great at it, and he wants to fit in and be part of it. And he's already hard at work, I'm told. I haven't talked to him in a couple of weeks, but I was told by one of our producers, he's already breaking down tape like a madman for the NFL draft. He's going to be part of our NFL draft coverage, and he's like going at it already. So it's really exciting.
Great football mind. I remember after SEC championship, I don't know who was on set. It may have been SEC Nation. I can't remember. But I remember they were pointing out something earlier in the game, just formation things happening. And he came in after the game and said that exact thing, said what he was trying to do and what the other team was trying to do. And at that moment, I remember I texted my friend. I was like, dude, that's the first time I've been able to actually hear Nick Saban break down football. Dude is a mind, a machine. So I'm excited to see game day next year. Hopefully, by that point in time, I have a job. So if anybody out there hiring,
hire this man.
Yeah, hire me. Help me out. But Rece, we thank you for your time, man. I appreciate you. It's going to be a huge day tomorrow. Hope you enjoy your time on the plains. But I'm just so grateful for your influence on me and just the opportunity for me to be able to be a friend and a brother and learning. And I just thank you for your time, man.
You bet, man. It was a pleasure, Justin.
Yeah. So if you guys are watching this, please go subscribe, and we will catch you guys for the next episode. We are out.
What's your pre-thoughts for the podcast? Tell me right now.
This is definitely a blessing. I grew up as a young kid every Saturday morning, waking up and hearing Rece Davis' voice before I even opened my eyes. He's been a great influence for me. He's the standard in the industry, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to go. Ready to do this thing.
Let's get it, man. Come on.